And just like that, silver is just under 31 again. Defying gravity. Look at the oil price right now. Look at inflation across the planet right now. In the Baltics, they're now seizing Russian ships. They seized one, an oil tanker, from their shadow fleet that's moving their oil, that's attempting to get around sanctions. We talked recently about the Russians moved their fleet from the influence of Damascus over to Tripoli Al-Fazan, to the east side. With the exception of the nuclear powered submarine, those ships don't have the range to get to Russian waters. I want to see how this plays out. The facilities they have for ships on that side of Tripoli Al-Fazan, the water's not really deep enough, and they weren't really built over there to accommodate those ships from the Russian fleet. So again, I don't know how they get home. What are you going to do, inter them there? If they want to sail out of there, remember, Paris and Russia, not exactly on speaking terms right now. As a consequence of this, there's no telling what kind of harassment the fleet or fleets from France, as some would call it. I don't know how they're going to react to the Russians attempting to escape the Great Sea. They may take them on. Unlikely, but it's a possibility. They may haul them into their ports and inter them. To outright seize them is not off the table. Because when those in Moscow was talking about where they got nuclear weapons and they will fire, Paris said, we got nukes too, and we'll fire. And you haven't heard them say anything to Paris ever since. Apparently, there's no more nuclear submarines of the Russians in the Great Sea, which means their ability to do a whole host of things, in, intelligence gathering, whatever it is now off the table. Launching particular cruise missiles, projecting power, harassing shipping. That changes a whole lot of dynamics. So how do parties, particularly those tied back to NATO, how do they interact with that particular fleet? How does this impact the Russians, who are already under heavy-duty sanctions? Their ruble is already in free fall. There are ripple effects to that. The rupee, the RMB, the yuan, the real. All these idiots talking about the quote-unquote BRICS. Everybody in BRICS is watching their quote-unquote currencies in free fall, including those under the influence of Pretoria, so-called. And not just theirs. Parties not affiliated with BRICS. Ask the guy up there who just left from being in charge of his party, operating at a corporate quote-unquote Ottawa. There have been no real recoveries of quote-unquote economies. There were artificial short-term bubbles. And the hard reality is coming home to roost on folks. So you have all these quote-unquote central bankers all over the place. They're attempting to do something about the issue they really have no control over. Everyone thinks it's the so-called central banks that's leading the markets, when actually they're trailing what the markets are saying. They're trailing what the markets are actually doing. So I tell folks, if you lay down with the non-substance-based economies, dogs, you're going to get with their fleas. And pirates all over the place are getting with their fleas. Where exactly are the Moorish, the Pan-Africanists in this equation? It's a legit question. And more importantly, why have they chosen to take that particular position? Because everybody knows ours by now. We are substance-based organic diplomacy and governance. We are substance-based commerce and trade, jurisdiction and venue. We are forced to monitor what's happening with the international buying power of our silver all across the planet. And you have all these factors. Wars and rumors of wars. Ships moving around and being seized, which is an act of war in the eyes of many. These things cause tensions to rise. War is an enemy of commerce and trade over the long haul. And wars always start with one or two parties that get angry. And then two parties are in conflict. And then others jump in on both sides. And before you know, you got plenty of global actors engaged in the conflict. And all this causes scarcity. All this causes not just death from violence of war, it causes scarcity of all types of consumer goods and products and agriculture. Consequences. So we have to monitor these things. We do monitor these things through 12 departments and 39 departments of the Imperial Government operations down to the local level to figure out from the vantage points how do we plot and navigate our course around and through all of the crazy from all these wars and rumors of wars that's happening all across the planet. And not just over oil anymore. Not just over access to water anymore. The supply routes being disrupted have impacted supply chains, and these things have consequences, and they ripple effect all over the place. Cause and effect.